Late afternoon, another day is nearly done. A darker gray is breaking through a lighter one. 1,000 sharpened elbows in the underground. The hollow hurried sound of feet on polished floor. And in the dollar store, a clerk is closing up and counting loonies, trying not to say, I hate Winnipeg. The driver checks the mirror 7 minutes late. The crowded rider's restlessness enunciates. Guess who sucked? The Jets were lousy anyway. The same route every day, and in the turning lane, someone stalled again. He's talking to himself, and here's the price of gas. Repeat his phrase, I hate Winnipeg. Above us all, leaning into sky, our golden business boy will watch the north end die and sing I love this town. Then let his arcing wrecking ball proclaim, I Winnipeg.
Mitch Pollock, welcome back to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandhi.
Greg, it's great to be back. I'm so happy to be back for a second time, and especially to talk about a song like this. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so the first time people were here was our epic episode 71. I think it was like a 5-hour and 10-minute episode about Potemkin city limits, which back in the day I was a crazy person. I still am. But I was really trying to make episodes as extreme as possible.
And there were so many of us that wanted to talk about that song, I think, too.
Yeah, it really got filled up. But you were on that one. So I'm glad that we have like a standalone time where we're not bookended by all kinds of other stuff. It's just you and me and the amazing cover that we just heard just to open this episode. But right. Mitch, who are you? What do you do? Tell the listeners out there who didn't hear you the first time on this podcast.
My name is Mitch Pollock. I'm a 43-year-old Torontonian. I work at the CBC on a radio, online video podcast called Q with Tom Power now. Used to just be Q, and then before it was Q and this other guy. And I've been there for 15 years now, which is wild. I've been a producer on that show for 15 years. I started in 2011 as so I was an intern, and they hired me for a couple months, and then they hired me for a few more months, and then they were like, well, do you just want to move to Toronto? Because I'm from BC. And I was like, yep, I'll move. And me and my now wife came out here, and I've been there ever since. And the reason I was here with you the last time was not just to talk about that song, but back in 2017.
Yeah, I think it was 17. Are you talking about the Chris interview?
Yeah, we interviewed Chris for Victory Lab. I would probably say it's still my favorite Propagandhi record. And we had Chris come in, and it was a legendary chat, and I've always wanted to do another one with him. We haven't, but one day maybe. And it was a joy to do that. And then obviously became a big fan of this podcast, and here we are.
Heck yeah. Okay, so you recently popped up on my Instagram stories with with you playing a Weaker Than song, One Great City, sitting on the couch in your house, I presume, busting out your acoustic guitar. And I was like, okay, this is a great chance to have Mitch back on the podcast and chat about something Propagandhi adjacent,
Yes.
but still very relevant to Propagandhi because it's so Winnipeg, right? It's one of the most quintessential Winnipeg songs that there is. But tell me a little bit about your history with enjoying the Weaker Thans to start, because we've talked about your Propagandhi enjoyment a lot. Tell me about your appreciation for the Weaker Thans.
It's that's such a good question because I used to be, as a Propagandhi fan, I was very much the early Propagandhi fan.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when they started, when John Kay was gone from the band, it kind of lost me for a bit as I was growing a bit, and I was like, wow, the first three records or first two records are like my jams. And so when John left, I was a bit bummed, and then he formed the Weaker Thans, and I wasn't like a huge Weaker Than fan at the start at the start either. Now I'm
Yeah.
like massive Weaker Than fan. But at the start it kind of lost me a bit, and I was like, oh, that happens. Your bands kind of people leave, they form other things, and maybe it's not your vibe. And as I grew up, I mean, the opposite couldn't have happened as good as it did because I'm now that the Propagandhi's never been better for me, and the Weaker Thans became one of my favorite bands as well. And like everyone I know, all my friends, the Weaker Thans became the band. And I saw them once back in when I lived in Vancouver at the Commodore Ballroom, and it was just one of those kind of shows where every single song um, is a massive crowd favorite, sing along, and then of course he does One Great City on his own later on, and that song, well, there's so much that we need to talk about that song, but it quickly became my favorite Weaker Than song, and I learned it way back then, which would have been like 2000 and when did Reconstruction Site come out?
Reconstruction Site came out in 2003. I believe it was August of '03.
Yeah, so around 2005 was when I moved to Vancouver, and was getting more into that band. And then we saw them, I think, that year or the year later. And it was just, yeah, one of those things where you hear them play that live as well. Um, and it just further cemented as my favorite Weaker Than song. And uh, I have a couple things to say. Well, one was that song, I've played it for so many years now, and I have a lot of family who's from Manitoba, and a lot who think that it's like a really like negative Manitoba, negative Winnipeg song, and it really isn't. I mean, it's or at least I would argue that it isn't, even though he does sing "I Hate Winnipeg" multiple times, and shits on the Guess Who and the Jets and all that stuff. But we can get into that. But I think it's like a magical song about a magical city and province, and it's lasted all this time.
Yes. Well, what's so funny too is I was looking at the little track list for Reconstruction Site today. The song is buried so deeply in the record too. It's like track 11. It's
Hmm.
one of those ones that easily could have been a, an overlooked track, one that was sort of forgotten, lost in the shuffle. You know what I mean? I'm thinking of
Hmm.
like things like Funeral Procession from Supporting Cast, how it's buried in the record, and just kind of got lost in the shuffle over the years. Like this one could have had that happen, but it seems to be quite the opposite because, I get that live record back there, and they play it like right near the end of the set. So this became a really beloved track within the band's catalog for like live performances too.
Yeah, if I recall the show we saw, I think it maybe opened the when they came back out for the encore. I think he came out first and did the song, and then I forget what they finished with. But yeah, it's not just a staple. Like I think it's their iconic track that that everyone can kind of agree is like, okay, everyone finds that one as one of the big ones, and then everyone else has all their favorite Weaker Than tracks that can really divide, not divide, but be all over the place because they have so many.
Yeah. Okay. So when you were playing this on Instagram, it was just kind of like a live little cell phone recording that you put in your stories. And I was like, oh man, you should like record this for real. And then you're like, haha, I already did. And that's the one that people heard to open this episode. Tell me the story of this recording that you remember, because I think this is like a 14-year-old recording, right? We're digging this thing way out of the archives here, and we're bringing it back.
Yeah, it was 2011 and actually connects completely to Q and coming to Toronto because
Huh.
so as I mentioned earlier, when I got offered a job out here and I said, hey, can I just move out? And they said, yeah, come move out here. We were planning on how do I get to Toronto? How do you move from Vancouver to Toronto? How do you move those big moves anywhere? And and one of my thoughts was, what if I took via rail? and and I've played music my whole life. I've been in bands, and I was like, because they hire musicians to entertain all of the people who are traveling on Via Rail across Canada, and they sit in the diner car or whatever with an acoustic, and they play music for a couple hours every night, or different times of the day, and they get a free ride. And at the time, I certainly needed a free ride here
Hmm.
and there. I was spending all my money that I made at a bar in Vancouver, and so I was applying to take this Via Rail job, and then you can do like one or two or whatever, and you need to play some recordings, and I had all my band's recordings, but those were all pretty different kind of music, and I want to show like the acoustic stuff I can play, and in hindsight, I think I picked the wrong song, but I did pick One Great City because I was like, well, it's Canadian and it's the prairies, and it's a song that means a lot to me and that always like does really well to people wherever they are, and it's a song that you can get a laugh to or you can really get moved. And so a friend of mine, Braden, he's a engineer and he would always record at this one studio in Vancouver. And I said, hey man, can we record One Great City? I want to put it with the other songs that I'm sending to Via Rail to get this job to get to Toronto. And he was like, oh yeah, for sure, man. Like however much time you need. So the next day or the day after, I went down with him to his studio and we knocked that out in like a half hour, not even. Like we set her up, and I think I played it two or three times, and we went with the best one. So that's the one you just heard, and I sent it to Via Rail, and I didn't end up getting the job, but I did get the song, and the reason was the timing of when I had to be there and a bunch of other stuff. But they did love the music and they loved that song. Although I still think I needed to pick some more sort of like classic Canadian, Bryan Adams stuff like that. Maybe some Neil Young, especially if I was gonna land on Winnipeg for something. But I had the song now, and so I put it up on my site, and people could hear it and stuff. And it's so funny that I was able to find it and download it for you because I hadn't listened to it in so long. But that was back in 2011. So yeah, so 15 years. And then the other day, playing it now, I've been, I'm currently going through a bunch of like health things, and I'm not working right now. And I'm pretty open about it on my Instagram. I've
Hmm.
been diagnosed with cancer, and I'm in treatment right now. And so I've had some time, and I've been playing my guitar more than ever. And I started playing that the other day, and I was like, oh, I want to share this. This is still such a jam.
Yeah.
And so I just set it up and recorded the other day and put it on, and you heard it, and a bunch of people heard it, and it was just a joy to sing that song again. And yeah, if you want, it's on my Instagram now for anyone who just heard the recorded version. You could hear the new live version, but yeah, that's why I did it recently.
Amazing. Was that your first take that you did the other day?
I
Is it
wish
is
it
it
was like
so
take like
ingrained?
10. It was take
Oh,
10. Yeah, I hadn't played guitar much in this time I've been off, and recently, like this week I have, but that song's got, as you can, the guitar is very, you miss one or two notes and you can really hear it, and it kind of throws that song away. You're not just chording along, you're dun 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 dun. It's all that, and if you miss one note, you can hear. And I missed a couple, but I think it came out pretty good.
amazing. Okay, so tell me what your. I'd like to talk about the lyrics a little bit, if that's cool
Hmm.
with you. Do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have them pulled up in front of you? I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah,
you have
yeah.
it.
I
I'm sure
do.
you have it memorized. But
I do.
I'm on. So I've been looking at. I've been chatting with a couple of friends in Winnipeg, and the thing that I've determined about this song is how this is what propaganda related stuff does. there's so many little layers to it that makes things so much more complicated than you should think that it would be, right? I mean, every single line here is a very careful depiction of stuff that apparently happens in Winnipeg all of the time. That's what I've been getting. That's what I've been gathering from my friends who are there right now. I keep texting them about specific songs and I was like, what is the north? Where is the north end? And they're like, well, it depends who you ask. And they
Hmm.
both said that. So the specifics in this song are very funny, and how detailed it gets. We get this first verse, late afternoon. Another day is nearly done. A darker gray is breaking through a lighter one. I love this line because it reminds me so much of Buffalo. I'm sure in Toronto,
Hmm.
you guys get those Great Lakes cloud cover
Oh
from
yeah.
like late October, like all the way in through the end of March, where when the sun comes out, it's almost too much, and then it jars me big time. I'm just like right across the lake from you,
Yeah.
um, but like, do you know what I mean about the about that thick, endless cloud cover that just lingers for months and months?
I even being from BC, I relate it more to Vancouver, to be
Mm,
honest. Toronto, and because being on the other side of the lake here to you, and the way the lake effect works, like we have, I think, a different climate than you do in
you do.
Buffalo. And so, but from Vancouver, I mean, there were some winters before we moved out here where it was dark and gray and rainy, of course, for I think the longest was like 40 days in a row or something one year. And to me, when I hear this song or when I play this song, the darker grays breaking through a lighter one is like exactly how I recall the winters in Vancouver. And it that is, I've never lived in Winnipeg. I've had family who lived in Manitoba, but I remember it being very sunny all the time whenever we went there. But Winnipeg is different. And so for me, it touches Vancouver in my experience there.
Gotcha. Yeah. This opening line, it just reminds me of like November, December, January, February, and March in Buffalo, where it's just this
Mm.
low-lying, thick cloud that just comes through. And so I just picture that as well. I mean, I was in Winnipeg. I've only been to Winnipeg twice, but I've been there
Hmm.
both times in October, and it's actually very pleasant in October. So I've never had the full brunt of the Winnipeg um, deep freeze misery, but I did have it in Saskatoon for 2 winters
Oh,
there. So that was a lot as well.
when was
Um,
that you were in Saskatoon?
2009 and 2010, both of those winters, I was at the University of Saskatchewan doing a master's degree there.
That's
Just a
right. That's right. Yeah.
fluke, but I have lived the Canadian prairie life for 2 years, and quite a time that was.
Yeah.
Um, so then we've got this next line. This is pretty funny. I don't know what you know about this, but it says 1,000 sharpened elbows in the underground. Do you know what the underground is?
Yeah, I'm 99% sure, but you tell me if I'm wrong. But in Winnipeg, like in Toronto, this is a very Toronto thing too. In the winter when it's absolute shit outside and so cold and all the snow, you exist in the ground. You're in the underground. There's that's where all the stores are. That's where you walk. That's where you go from place to place downtown, and then to your parking lot to drive home or to like be up to get your bus in the cold to get to your house. And so that, I mean, obviously rings a bell here for us. Vancouver doesn't really have that the same way, but in Toronto, for sure, the underground and the stores like, the dollar store, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, this is really funny too. I was talking to Sam Thompson from Witch Police Radio in Winnipeg. He's like my one of my on the ground go-to people because he knows like everything about the city. And he's like, I was going to say that the elbows in the underground line has decades of subtext to it.
Hmm.
So I found that to be really interesting. So I asked him why, and he said he meant that Portage and Main is a heavily politicized issue in Winnipeg. At the
Hmm.
time that the song was written, the intersection was still impassable to pedestrians, and everyone but cars have been forced underground just across the street since the late 70s. And it's open now and doesn't affect traffic by more than a few seconds, despite all the doomsaying. But at the time, it never seemed like it would be reopened. So it's this massive, like downtown economic hub of the city, right? Right in the middle of the town, Portage and Main. And it was argued over for a long time. And then there was actually a vote, um, and CBC published a heat map of the voting results for opening the intersection of Portage and Main. And what happened was the people who live near Portage and Main voted overwhelmingly to open it to foot traffic, and the suburban people who just drive through voted to keep it closed because of the commute. And I wrote, haha, those NIMBY fuckers. And so it's there's like you can Google the heat map of the vote for voting about this one intersection in the city, and he said now it's a complete non-issue because it slows traffic by like 5 or 10 seconds. But if you Google the Portage and Main plebiscite, you can find a CBC story about that particular intersection, and it relates to this underground line in the song.
Well, I'm not sure if it's like this in Buffalo, but I mean, living in Toronto, that the map you just talked about is the exact same thing for any sort of remotely similar uh, politicized move here as far as people who walk or people who drive, and I mean it lines up the exact same with all the people who live outside of the downtown being all for the drives, and people who live in downtown who live in the condos and where we are in our small house, we are on the other side of things, and it couldn't be more similar to how that happened in Winnipeg as well.
Absolutely. Like right now here in Buffalo, there's a huge move to expand our crappy light rail system. We literally have a single line light rail train, right? It ends at the university and it goes downtown. Um, but like it doesn't go to the airport, it doesn't go
Mhm.
to the north campus of the University of Buffalo. It's just this insanely short stretch. And for years, they've been trying to expand it, but they just can't because people in the suburbs have really kicked up a big fit. So it's totally the same thing here as well. I'm sure it's the same in so many cities around the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went and checked on the dollar store in the underground, and it says that there is a dollar store in the underground walkway of the Winnipeg Underground as well. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's still there. I don't know if it's open or closed, but in the past there has been, and there may still be a dollar store there.
Dollar stores are everywhere in Canada, man, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's one still there. I'm sure there's a handful here in Toronto, down in the those areas, like underneath in the underground, and we see them all everywhere else. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if the exact same one is there in Winnipeg.
So this next line is something that I learned about in 2007 when I visited Canada for the first time. The clerk is closing up and counting loonies, trying not to say. Well, we won't say the next line yet, but
Yeah,
tell the world if they don't live in Canada, loonies. What are those?
it's a dollar. It's a dollar. We've had, it was maybe the 80s or early 90s when we got rid of the paper dollar and got our loonie because it's a loon on an orange, gold loonie, a coin.
Yep.
And I mean, that's like, this is also what makes John K. Sampson Fellows like just the Canadian songwriter in a way that isn't uh, cheap or cheesy, but in just a very knowledgeable and way of bringing what Canada is into music without being sort of like the classic cheesy Canadian stuff. Because Looney is kind of cheesy, but he's just does magic with these lyrics.
I love it. Well, and I should say right now that there are loons in the Niagara River between
Hmm.
Buffalo and Fort Erie, Ontario. I was out on a bike ride on Grand Island the other day, and I saw
Yeah,
some loons out on the river. And whenever I go up to the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York, I tend to see them up there in Middle Saranac Lake by Lake Placid and Saranac Lake, the town. So I'm a big fan of the loon being on the coin here because I am a loon fan
good.
myself.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, they're not worth much down in the States, but yeah, that's great.
I love it. So we got to like now we got to tie this line together. The clerk is closing up and counting loonies, trying not to say I hate Winnipeg. And to me, like something that's so interesting about this song is like the way that it's like listing all these things that people can easily complain about,
Yeah.
but then they're like talking themselves into finding those things endearing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
they're like, oh, this sucks, that sucks, this sucks. But you know what? God. And then they're like, it's this reluctant acceptance of being like, but you know what? This is actually fine. They're talking themselves, they're aware of the things that suck, but then they're turning those things into the sucky things into things that they can take ownership over and be like, you know what? It's our suck, right? Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
100%. And I think this might be how I feel about that might be wrong from what how John feels about it when he wrote it. But I think for every person from Winnipeg that I know, a lot of musicians, a lot of friends, they all love Winnipeg. Winnipeg is a magical musical place.
Hmm.
And they love it in a way that is different than how people love Vancouver, or how people love Toronto or New York or wherever. Like they love it because the downside of a lot of Winnipeg, the cold, the winters, and this is such a like a cliche, but they create these musicians who are just inside playing music all day. And we have some of our best musicians are all from Winnipeg.
Hmm.
One of them mentioned in this song, one who wrote this song,
Yeah.
and so I see that, you know, as someone who's working in Winnipeg who loves Winnipeg, but maybe their life, maybe their the way they've uh, the way that Winnipeg's treated, I think by others outside of the city. To me, they're saying Winnipeg's great, but they kind of are always fighting what a lot of people say that it sucks, and that I hate Winnipeg is almost more of like a, do I hate Winnipeg? That's how it hits me. It's probably not at all what John meant by writing it, but to me, it's more people who love living there, but are kind of feel stepped on by a variety of things.
Hmm.
You know,
I would have definitely wound up living in Winnipeg had I stayed in Saskatoon after my master's degree. I
hmm
just know in my heart that I eventually would have wound up moving to Winnipeg. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
in
yeah,
another life, I would be living there right now. Like, I could live there now. Like, every time I go, I'm like, oh yeah, I could live here. Because it just has the sort of grit and charm that I appreciate about certain cities, like my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, or where I currently live in Buffalo, New York. Winnipeg has got that kind of feel for me. It's my kind of town, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So we've got this next line. The driver checks the mirror 7 minutes late. So we're
yeah,
referring
yeah,
to a Winnipeg transit driver. Apparently, the city's transit system is like fairly unreliable and behind schedule, and the crowded riders' restlessness enunciates. So everybody's late, everybody's frustrated. The buses are, running in this like subarctic insane climate. And it just kind of reminds me of something funny. And I was messaging earlier with Sam from Which Place about this song, and he said, "Oh yeah, I was on a Winnipeg transit bus just now, and the driver almost crashed into a car that wasn't paying attention, and there was a guy behind me that was kind of screaming in gibberish for the entire ride." And we were like, "Oh, that kind of fits with the song." Like I told Sam that he experienced the full Samson with that little scene of comedy of the bus almost running into a car and then somebody
yes.
yelling in the bus seat behind him. So this is real stuff. It happened today, and this song was written 23 years ago.
Yeah, I wish I've been to Winnipeg a few times, but we've always had a vehicle, so I don't know where the transit was at then. But from the people I do know there, I've heard it hasn't improved a ton, and so a lyric like that still resonates, I think.
So, are you a fan of the Guess Who, famously singers of American Woman?
Yes, yes. Yeah. I mean, I definitely am a big fan. I think I've produced interviews with Randy Bachman and Burton Cummings probably 6 times total between the two of them. And they're now reunited as the band again, and I think they're going on tour. And uh, we've had them both perform. And obviously, Randy has been a big part of the CBC for many, many years with his show when it used to be on. Uh, and they really like, if it's too old for us, but when you hear it from people my parents' age, and my dad who grew up in Manitoba, and the Guess Who being the band that would come to everyone's high school and play,
Hmm.
and also became the Canadian band that was accepted in the States, and not just because of American Woman, but from the vast majority of their hits, and became like the cool band from Canada. And I think anything that's like existed for that long a time, and you've heard these songs, they're everywhere. They're on The Simpsons, and I think you have a different idea of what that band meant to this country than I think what they used to, especially for people our age who weren't there when they started.
Yeah.
So that's how I see that part of that.
Yeah, we got these eyes,
Hmm.
laughing, no sugar tonight.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on. There's so many, and hilariously, this live record recorded at Burton Cummings Theater
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Winnipeg. The line "The Guess Who Sucked" sung at the Burton Cummings Theater, recorded live in 2009 for all to hear to this day.
Incredible,
I
incredible. And
mean,
I would love to. I've never asked John what his thought is of that. It'd be a tough question to ask him, but I always wondered what he thought as well. And then yeah, you play there. I've produced a live Q show at the Burton Cummings Theater, and when you go to a place like that, it's such a legendary spot in Winnipeg, and you that I mean that comes to mind, especially the band and Burton.
mhm.
Yeah,
So we're in the thick of NHL playoff season right now. The Buffalo Sabres just won their
nice
first
win.
playoff
Yeah,
game in like 14 years, which is sweet. Everybody here is freaking out. But we've got this next line. The Jets were lousy anyway. And
yeah,
as we know, in the 90s, 95, 96, the Jets moved to Arizona to
yeah.
become the Arizona, were they the Coyotes? Is that what they were?
Coyotes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ugh, that team also sucked, and they have since moved away from there. But the Jets got a new team in hold on, let me check the
Yeah,
date.
I remember.
2011
That's
is
right.
when the
Yeah,
Jets came back to Winnipeg. And their goaltender is very well known in the U.S. for recently,
Hellebuck.
yeah, winning that medal for the MAGA team that all went
Mm-hmm.
to the White House, bunch of
Mm-hmm.
shitheads.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's the Jets are back, but this song was written in early 2000s when the Jets had been away for about 5 years at that point,
You
and
got to remember that it was devastating
yeah,
for the city when they lost the Jets. Like
oh yeah,
devastating. I remember hearing it from so many family members. Like when that team got moved, it was not just a nightmare for, hockey fans. I think it was like a real tragedy for the city. And I mean, the Jets were lousy anyway. Like that's such like a classic line that people I would hear from other people. It's like, well, they sucked and they were bad, so they're not here anymore. That totally makes sense.
yeah.
But they're just like building this to make them feel better about what happened. And I remember when the Jets came back, it just lifting the city back up, even if the logo was quite maligned because it's a military jet,
Yeah, yeah.
and still like people are like, yeah, I still don't really agree with like, but they wish they had the old logo back. But this makes so much sense and was something that I'm sure so many people talked about after when they were without a team in Winnipeg, which basically lifted that whole city up.
hmm we're like the military thing is interesting too because of Chris Hanna's history of like living on the military base, like out in like Southport, I believe, like out by Portage la Prairie. So that's kind of funny. But I mean, can you imagine if the Buffalo Bills moved away from Buffalo? Like it would be like I'm just like theorizing,
Hmm.
theoretically thinking, because like I know when they were really bad, like they tried to do some games up in Toronto.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
know
that's
for a
awful.
fact that the NFL probably would have been quite happy to move the team to a way bigger market at many points in their history. But what that would do to this mid-sized town, losing something like that, I can't. So I can imagine
Yeah.
what Winnipeg went through losing their NHL team.
I think that's spot on. I think those are nearly exactly the same situation if you guys lost your team. And when it was looking like they might come up here, I mean, the games at the Skydome were horrible. Like it's a horrible place to watch a football game. And I've, went to a bunch down at Ralph Wilson, or when it was called that,
Yeah.
down in Buffalo, and the vibe there couldn't be more different than how it was up here in Toronto. It was never going to be a good fit here.
Did you see Buffalo Bills games at the Skydome?
I didn't. I've seen some like Argos games,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, when they played there, but
Well, I'm glad that the Bills are not leaving. I'll just say
yes,
that.
me too. Me too.
Okay, so the next line in the turning lane, someone stalled again. Apparently, this is a very common thing because of the minus 40-degree winters, the deterioration of cars, where a car will just be like sitting at a stoplight and just some piece of junk will just conk out. Apparently, this is a very common thing.
Hmm.
But the driver is talking to himself behind the wheel. He hears the price of gas, repeats his phrase, "I hate Winnipeg." So I just love this picture of just this random person driving this total clunker trying to get where they're going, and their day is entirely ruined because the car won't just make it the extra, 2.5 kilometers to the driveway at the end of a long day, whenever it's like minus 30 or minus 40 outside. Now he's got to get out and push, and he's got to figure out what to do with this piece of shit. It's
Matt,
just like you can just picture it, like it just snowballs. The scene writes itself.
and I wonder, like, I'm like, was this John? Did John do this once? Is he driving to a practice with Chris and or the Weaker Thans? When he formed that band, is this like more of a? I always wonder. I'm like, I'm sure it's happened to so many people, but yeah, I always sort of thought when I hear this song, I'm like, I bet you that was John, like putting a bit of himself in one of his tunes. But again, I'm probably wrong about a lot of
There's
this.
there's uh there's nothing worse than being in a car in Buffalo whenever it's like snowing really hard and having your car get stuck and you have to like get out and the snow is pelting you in the face and then you're digging out from underneath the wheels just to try to get a little bit of momentum so you can keep going
Hmm.
again.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've been in that situation a couple times, and there is not much worse. And I could totally picture myself being like, I hate Buffalo in that exact moment. So it's just too funny. It's too relatable and absolutely comedic for anybody who understands the severity of winter in places like this.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so then we get to kind of a big picture thing. And up above us all, leaning into sky, our golden business boy will watch the North End die. So the golden business boy is referring to the statue that is on top of the Manitoba Legislature building. I have
Hmm.
seen it in person a couple of times. I have pictures of me doing a selfie with the golden business boy in the background. Interestingly, the CD version of Less Talk More Rock, which turns 30 years old in 2 days, by
Hmm.
the way,
Well, yeah, yeah.
the building that is on the back cover of the CD version of Less Talk More Rock is the building where the Golden Business Boy is on top of. So everybody can see that. But it's a 20-foot golden statue of a naked dude clutching a bushel of wheat, and until the 1940s, it was bronze, but then it was painted gold in the early 40s by the government. And then in 1951, it was given a gilding of real gold to look like its present day version. So I mean, I'm looking at this on genius.com. So obviously I don't have like some super fancy source on that, but that is the caption of what I'm reading. So feel free to tell me if I am absolutely wrong. Or if I am wrong, everybody log into freaking genius.com and update this thing yourself. But that's what the Golden Business Boy is. Have you ever seen this before?
I've seen the Golden Business Boy being in Winnipeg, and I've seen tons of pictures, and I think you are correct with its how it's changed over the years, um, and certainly this is the peak of this song is this moment where here's the person who's actually singing, "I love this town," but is the person who truly hates it and wants to destroy it are the people who love that statue, who are the people who are in the economy, the banking, all the things that are they're trying to do in Winnipeg and then break down all of the buildings that they hate and that are hurting them. I just
Yeah.
think it's a perfect closer, and anyone who lives there knows the Golden Business Boy extremely well.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting too is I'm glad that my friend Sam pointed this out, but if you look at the lyrics that are printed, the words north and end are capitalized. So north end is it's capitalized. Things like West End and North End have capitalized because they are the names of specific neighborhoods, not geographic references.
Hmm.
And then there are apparently sub neighborhoods within North End, within West End, things like that. But the North End of Winnipeg, the Golden Business Boys facing that direction, is, it depends who you ask. I texted I texted my buddies Paul and Sam, and they both said the exact same thing. I said, "Is the North End of Winnipeg dying slash dead?" And they both said it depends who you ask. So obviously you can think about suburban opinions of like city neighborhoods and things like that. So it depends who you ask, apparently, but it's sort of slightly got issues with areas of poverty, with some violence, with some
Hmm.
deteriorating infrastructure, and some neglect. But there is a great photo that Sam sent me online where there is a garage, like a mechanic garage, that has "Welcome to the North End, People Before Profit" painted on the roof of the business. So I'm really stoked to see that, which was fun.
That's amazing. I didn't know that part at all. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's and it's very complicated. I kept asking them about the neighborhoods, and they were like, "Yeah, well, just like everything here, just like everything, Winnipeg is oddly complicated."
Yeah.
But there is definitely some not so subtle racism behind the
Oh,
shorthand of people who would talk about the North End being problematic.
yeah.
Shocker, right?
Yeah.
Shocker.
In 2000 and I want to say it was 2009. I was in a band. I played guitar for a solo female singer named Colette Trudeau, and we went to Winnipeg and played at the Pyramid Club there, and spent a few days there. There was an awards show we were a part of as well, and uh, I mean that's the sense you get, or I got then, that it really was different neighborhoods existing right beside each other, which people have different opinions of, that are all very unique in a variety of ways, whether it be social, economic, um, environment. And this, what you just said, really rings true for me from that experience of seeing a bunch of different spots in the North End as well, and playing downtown and all of those things. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and like I know that Propagandhi's played the Pyramid in the past as well. Yeah, it's funny thinking about all those like venues up there whenever I would see shows listed like the Garrick
Mm,
and West End Cultural Center, Burton Cummings, all those places.
hmm.
And then we got this last song and "Sing I Love This Town" and then "Let His Arcing Wrecking Ball Proclaim I Hate Winnipeg." And it's like metaphorical
Hmm.
for the government claiming they love the city, but continuing to architect a decline
Yeah.
in ways. And there's a lot there to be said about there's something that used to be called the Portage Place Mall, which was huge, and it was like built to revitalize the city. But it was like a massive mall that raised blocks of downtown in the 80s. It contributed to killing downtown and it turned into like an empty, dangerous place, and then was torn down just apparently this last year. So it was a dead mall that blighted downtown for like 30 years. That was meant to revitalize it. But yeah, so that has recently been destroyed. So hopefully there's some good stuff going on in the spot of that now to actually revitalize instead of do what the Portage Place Mall actually wound up doing.
A truly good wrecking ball, truly
Yeah.
appreciated wrecking ball,
Yeah.
doing it all. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, um so Mitch, what are some takeaway thoughts you've got about this song? Like what does this like mean to you and just kind of, what do you appreciate about this tune and what this band has done for you as a fan of music?
I mean, it's a beautiful song. Like
Yeah.
melodically, um, you know, the guitar work is incredible and fun to learn. If you play guitar, if you are wanting to learn a song that takes a bit of work to learn, just because it's such a multi-finger picked song, it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of work, musically, artistically. If you can connect with the lyrics, I think that just adds to it. Like
Hmm.
we've talked about them for the last hour, but I think that's almost like, to me, in this song, it's secondary. Also, not being from Winnipeg and having the very personal touch to it, I do appreciate the whole thing, obviously. But for me, it's music. And when I pick up an acoustic guitar, and I have a capo, that's often one I'll just kind of warm up by playing, like everyone kind of has their songs that they do.
Hmm.
I have that, and like Here Is No Why by the Smashing Pumpkins, and like songs like that are just, I pick up a guitar and that's what I start playing.
Yeah,
Uh
it looks accessible too. I was watching you play it. I was like, "Oh, that's an accessible tune."
yes, it's totally learnable. It may sound a bit tough, but it really is. Your fingers aren't moving around a ton. And it's more about your right hand, or your pick hand, um, hitting the right notes in the right parts of the song. But Yeah, it's a beautiful track. And one thing I wanted to say is that in 2016
Hmm.
was post Weaker Thans was the first and only time that I've produced an interview with John Kay on Q.
Mm.
He came in on the album with oh Vampire Alberta was the record called.
Oh, let me see here. Let me pull some records out.
Yeah.
Oh. All righty. I've got my provincial here. I've got winter wheat here. Winter wheat. This one.
Yeah, Winter Wheat. So he
Yeah.
came on Q for Winter Wheat, and it was the only time we've had him on the show. And we he played a couple songs on Q. We did a great interview. It was notably like it was the day after Donald Trump was first
Oh
elected
no.
as the president in the state. So everyone had this night before where this happened, and it was a rough night for a lot of people. And the next day I was up super early because I had to load in John to perform on cue. And it was like a vibe, unlike any vibe I've ever felt at the CBC that morning. And here I am with, one of my musical heroes. Obviously, probably has some thoughts
Hmm.
about how everything just went. And I remember it actually being like, a beautiful day to have someone like John uh, there, because he is a special, unique human being who is unlike anyone I've probably ever met uh, on this show, especially in such a heavy, heavy time for a lot of people. Having him there was like like what a incredible bonus to have someone like that in playing his music, talking about other things, talking about his songwriting, talking about Weaker Thans and doing his own solo stuff. Uh, I remember it being magical. I haven't heard that interview in so long.
I can't find it. I'm searching for it right now on YouTube. Is it
Yeah,
not published?
it wasn't filmed. It would have been
Hmm.
on radio. I can find. I'll see. And it was Tom who did the interview.
I
Uh,
want to hear that, man. I've
it
never
was the
heard that one.
Yeah, it was the first year that we have Tom's Q with Tom Power, and yeah, I'm sure I can find it somewhere. But the way things work at CBC, a lot of stuff gets taken offline after 3 years or so. And we can still see Chris's interview,
Here's the
oh yeah,
internal painting of the winter
beautiful.
wheat gatefold, which is really pretty.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic record. I love that record, and yeah, it was a special time, and I have such fond memories of meeting him then and having him on the show, and on a very strange day.
Yeah. What a crappy 10 years it has been of being held hostage by that person.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, we definitely are. Everybody who listens to this show knows how I feel, but I talk about that shit nonstop. So we don't have to go there at the moment,
Yeah,
but everybody knows how I feel.
yeah, yeah. Well, you probably can imagine how I feel.
Yeah, it's just disappointing. It's very disappointing
Yeah,
to be endlessly subjected to it. But I would definitely love to hear that Q interview with John because it's not on YouTube. So if you can track that down for me, that would be
I'm sure I can. Yeah,
real nice.
yeah.
Um, well, Mitch, what a pleasure. I'm so glad that we could dig out this cover that you made years ago, shine some light on it, get some new ears on it, because it sounds great.
Oh, thanks.
And people can find it and they can download it themselves. Can I say where to get it?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
All right. So if you're listening to this and you're this far into this episode, you're diehard for starters. But you can go to soundcloud.com/Mitchell Black. And that's where you can get it. It's the top file on there. And if you go to the web browser version, it's the easiest one because there's three little dots underneath the audio waveform. If you click on those three dots, a button will pop up that says download file. So you can download it or you can just stream it on SoundCloud. Either way, whatevs. Maybe if you ever do a Bandcamp uh, with it, maybe I can I'll share that link as well. So whatever you want to do with it, I'll share on the podcast.
Amazing, amazing. Well, yeah, people can download at their leisure, and if they would like to, I'm all for it. No money needed. That is for whoever wants to hear.
Um, okay, well, Mitch, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks, buddy.
Leaning into sky.
golden business boy. Watch the North End die. Sing I love this town. Then let his arcing wrecking ball proclaim.